Hi, and welcome to episode 2 of Talking About. This week, we're talking to a nice fella, I suppose, Omar Ali. Omar Ali is an award-winning director, actually multi-award-winning director, but in this particular episode of Talking About, we're staying away from the direction and gearing more toward what he does very, very well. Not to say he doesn't direct very well, he does. But we're going to be talking about his adaptation and translation prowess. He has worked on 2 major productions, which he has taken, like, for instance, from English to Malay. He has adapted Macbeth, the Scottish play, which in Malay turned out to be Dato Seri. And he also, he didn't really adapt the next one, which was Animal Farm, because there is no actual play. What he did was to make a play out of the book and adapt it into Malay. Both productions extremely successful. Both productions totally sold out performances. So now we're going to speak to Omar Ali. Omar!
Hi, Joe.
G'day.
G'day.
How you going, all right?
Hey, thank you.
Mate, what is the difference? Because a lot of people get confused between translation and adaptation. Adaptation.
Adaptation, yes.
Yeah. So what is the difference?
Well, simply put, a translation is just, you take any body of text in one language and you translate to, another language. Whereas adaptation is a bit more complex. But just to go back to translation is actually quite common, especially in books, in poetry, in TV, movies. And I mean, you got subtitles and everything. So, and also theater. You see a lot of productions that are translated productions in theatre. For example, last episode you had Faridah who talked about Hamlet, if I'm mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah, which was Tragedy Hamlet, which is a Malay translation of Hamlet.
It was not an adaptation.
It was not an adaptation,
yeah.
But one would argue that every translation is sort of an adaptation, but to a limited degree.
Can I ask you a question? You recall my version of Philadelphia, Here I Come.
Yes.
Would you consider that an adaptation or a translation?
That's definitely an adaptation.
That's an adaptation because it wasn't translated.
It was. That's a prime example of an English to English or the same language kind of adaptation, where what is adapted is the world around it. So it was something that it was based in
Ireland,
and then you localized it, right? So that's exactly what adaptation is. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yes. All right. Now, why adapt? Why not just translate?
Well, to be honest, it's a lot more fun. I mean, for us, it's a lot more exciting to reimagine the world, because it's not just a matter of just translating to another language. Because the problem with sometimes just simply translating a piece is that even though the language is more either understandable or recognizable, what is not recognizable is the world and the cultural context behind it. Like certain cultural norms that is perhaps easily received or perceived by the audience in a different cultural setting might not resonate with an audience in a different part of the world. So adaptation for us it's sort of like is sort of bridging that gap of something considered very foreign. And this is actually I might want to say at this point as well, that was part of what my father and I, because in adaptation I did it with my father, Omar Ali Hasham, and one of the point of doing this is that we realize that sometimes there are certain stories or myths or legends that bear so many lessons, human lessons, that are considered very foreign, something outside of our cultural norm, and therefore sometimes there is this tendency to sort of either resist or sort of reject. For example, sometimes it's very easy for audiences to sort of, this story is not relevant to us because it's relevant to the people, of that culture. There is a tendency to sort of no, this is not us, and therefore not absorb the lessons perhaps of such stories. So what we decided to do, and what we thought was important to do, what was necessary, was to take those stories and then give it a local context, something that our audiences can relate to and understand in their own way, and realize, oh, these stories are actually, very true to us as well. And that's actually one of the takeaways of what we've been doing. We realize how amazingly same we are. The sameness of I mean, for example, let's say you take the Scottish play, right? The Scottish play, and this is basically a story about a man. It was written by a man 400 years ago, and it was about a man who lived 600 years before that. So it was 1,000 years ago in Scotland. As far as possible from Malaysia.
What the hell is that to do with Malaysia?
With people here.
Yeah.
But surprisingly, and evidently so, after having staged it here, a lot of the lessons, or a lot of the humanity, the same. We find a lot of the same human suffering, the same human frailty, the same human beauty that existed 1,000 years ago, 10,000 kilometers away, to exist, or rather, to be relatable by people here today in Malaysia, 10,000 kilometers away. And I think that's amazing in that sameness.
Right.
Yeah.
Is this the reason that you and your father chose Macbeth?
Oh well, to be honest, that was 2015. When Videographer started. In 2015, there was a lot of I mean, in politics. I mean, things are very different now. Or maybe,
are they?
Or maybe very much the same now when we think about it. But politics was a huge conversation in our dinner conversations, and.
Your dinner conversations with your father?
With my father, yes.
With your late father?
With my late father, yes. And I mean, just to bring the history behind this as well, because we were, at the studio at 𝐏𝐀𝐌, we're celebrating 400 years, Shakespeare 400, right? And then we were all tasked to do Shakespeare. And I remember going, oh, what am I going to do? And then on one of these family dinners, I spoke to my father about it, and he was just like, oh. And because we were talking about politics, because we were talking about the power couple at the time, and suddenly that the two ideas sort of matched, and we decided, oh, okay, perhaps my father excitedly said, the Scottish play, Macbeth, and I said, oh yeah, that's very pertinent to what was going on at the time.
Can I ask you whether the title that you and your father chose, Dato Seri, was that purely by accident, or was it totally intended?
No, it's totally intended.
Right.
Because it was actually in the same conversation, and as soon as he mentioned it, and part of why he mentioned it, to be honest, was because that's just something that Macbeth, the Scottish player, is something that he studied in school half a century ago,
right?
And it's something that stayed with me. And when the whole talk about doing Shakespeare, it just struck him, and it was something that was put in, like I said at the time, with the politics or the
I suppose I should make something very clear to the audience as to why we whisper the word Macbeth.
Yes.
Yeah. It is common theatre superstition that if you mention the title of the play, the Scottish play, then you have to run around the theatre 7 times naked, right?
Yes.
and spit all over the place. So it's a superstition that we have about Macbeth.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I do not enjoy running.
No.
I don't mind being naked, but but running around,
forget
that's
it.
too much. Yeah.
So Omar, it all came about because of these discussions that you had with your father, your late father.
Yes, my mom hated that. We tend to turn our family dinners into this sort of the socio-political debates on like how Malaysia should be, and how our society should be, and how ridiculous, the political situation was and is.
Also, were you influenced by the death of your brother?
Heavily so, actually. Heavily so. I believe how we would think about it is my father, my brother Khalid. He was very passionate about certain things. He was a student of politics, philosophy, and economics, and he wanted to express himself. He wanted to stand up for something. That's what we believed in, and I believe he stood up and he expressed himself in the only way he knew how. Okay. And ever since his death, we've been inspired to I guess perhaps, to be honest, perhaps those conversations, those dinner conversations was always sort of related to what he was fighting against, rather.
Okay.
I think my late brother Khalid Ali, he saw, or he was very disturbed with the injustices.
He was your younger brother, right?
My younger brother by 10 years, my baby brother Khalid. Yes. Unfortunately, in 2013, he passed away. He took his life, and he left us with some of his poetry, which heavily inspired. I mean, to be honest, some of the lines in Dato Seri and even Kandang, are directly. I lifted directly from his poetry.
Oh, really?
Yes. It's quite personal, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. But heavily influenced by his actions and his choice.
I suppose to the audience out there that we talk about adaptation and translation, they think, that's an easy thing, but obviously the process is quite complex. Can you maybe talk about the process?
Oh, wow, it's insane, actually. The process is quite funny, actually, because to give you some context, at the time, I was, I think I was still very fresh in theatre. I've only been directing for a year, at that point, and then. For my father, he was a businessman. He lived his life, most of his life in the corporate world. He worked in a GLC.
But he was a very successful businessman.
He was, and I would also like to believe that even though he was he was a businessman, but I think my late father was an artist through and through. I think he had the soul of an artist. He just never had the opportunity to practice his artistry.
And you gave him that opportunity.
I certainly hope that's the case. I certainly hope that is the case. That's the lovely part about having that chance, that opportunity to work with him, because I believe that we're talking about this, growing up as well. This guy, he's in business, he's in corporate, but this is also the same guy that also keeps reminding me, because I think he knew that I had kecenderungan in Malay. I had this tendency, or I had this, can't think of the word right now, this preference for arts, and he kept saying things like, and I think he knew that, because I think he himself has this artistic soul, and he kept, he said to me, I remember one of the things he said to me was, Omar, remember that an artist, the strength of an artist is not just it's not just in his hands, it's not just in his craft, it's not just in the things that he produced. The strength of an artist lies in his eyes, his vision, and what he is able to perceive. And it's one of the things that I think I carry with me all the time, because I think, even though, like I said, he's a businessman and a corporate figure, but I think even in his work, he applies artistry, which I think was very natural.
I have very fond memories of your late father. He a man who was responsible for how many thousands of employees? How many?
60,000.
60,000.
Yeah, over 60,000. It's insane.
This corporate head of this enormous conglomerate, right? And yet he has an artistic soul.
And to be honest, I think the reason why he went for that life as well. He's not just any corporate, I believe, because he was, essentially he's still a government servant, and he's always been passionate about the people and about the welfare of the people, and I think, that's why he worked tirelessly in GLC, and I think, once that was over, he applied that same passion to the arts. Also because, I think this is worth saying, that one of the things he said before he passed on was that he said, Omar, perhaps because he was, to give some context, his whole life he was trying to forward this idea of this paradigm shift in how we live as Malaysians, how we treat the economy, how we see ourselves as citizens, and our responsibility. Amanah, one of his concepts that he always talks about is amanah, which is something around responsibility and trust. And that's been something that's a major theme actually for both our productions. Yeah. So he's been talking about that in his corporate life, in business. But I remember before he passed, one of the things he said to me was that, Omar, perhaps it's with the arts, with the performing arts, that this idea of a paradigm shift could be shared, more widely. Yeah. Because he was trying his level best, I believe, in his work life, in the things that he does. But I think at some point he realized there is a certain limit to this sort of understanding.
Can I ask you, how do you think your father, if he was still alive, God rest his soul, how do you think he would react to the present day situation?
To be honest, with the 𝐓𝐄𝐀𝐌 and everything, I've been thinking long and hard as well. I'm very curious about how he would see what's going on right now. And there's a thing in me that thinks that this is just beyond ridiculous, I think. Because one thing that I can say about my late father was how, this is one thing I really missed about having him around as well, was the fact that, because he lived his life, like I said, he lived his life in the GLC world, working in business, in corporate life, but also having to deal with politics and politicians and their. So I've been thinking as well about how he might react to the current situation, because what I was trying to say just now was that I sort of miss his optimism, and this is something that I did not share with my father. Yes. I'm quite pessimistic with how things are. But maybe because he's of the older generation, and he was very optimistic in terms of the sort of changes in society that he hopes to see in the future of Malaysia.
Can I ask, because both your productions of Dato Seri and Animal Farm, which was Kandang, right? Both were as a collaboration with your father, with your late father. Are you inclined to continue, or since your father's passing, have you maybe lost interest in doing those wonderful kind of things that you've done with both those productions?
Oh no, to be honest, the socio-political, even socio-economic content of what we work on together is something that I wish I didn't feel so strongly about it. I wish I could just drop it, and focus on other areas and move on with other areas in my life. But it's something that haunts me, I think, and it's something that regardless of what I try to go towards, I always come back to it. And I think that's something, it's an obsession that I'm afraid that I inherited from my father. So at the moment I'm trying to go into different aspects of a similar message, more on a socio-philosophical perspective of things.
Omar, we've given a lot of emphasis in this conversation on Dato Seri, but you also worked on another wonderful classic, Animal Farm. Of the two,
yes.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but sure. which do you believe was the most difficult or most what's the word? Challenging for you?
Oh, Animal Farm for sure.
Yes.
Animal Farm for sure.
Because?
Mostly because with the tragedy of Macbeth, with Dato Seri, it was based on a working script. In fact, a proven script. That show has been done. The production many times
ad infinitum
for the past 400 years. Yes. So it was proven. So when we did Kandang, it was a lot more challenging. It was very scary, to be honest. Simply because it was adapted from a novella from George Orwell's novella. So we didn't have. So we had to, on one hand we had to talk about, basically, transferring the usual sort of literary narrative onto the stage, which is no easy feat, because from the storyteller's narrative, we have to change it to basically the stage in terms of speech, in terms of conversations and dialogue. So that was a biggest challenge. And also, it was a lot more, although I gotta say, it's a lot more fun, because what we realized is that socio-political content that I was talking about earlier, I feel that, after staging it, I feel that it resonates a lot better with humor, which is present in Kandang, rather than tragedy.
Yes.
In Dato Seri. Yeah. Because in tragedy...
But mind you, Kandang was dark humour. It was very dark.
Yes. It is a dystopia of what Malaysia could be, or perhaps one can argue what Malaysia already is at the current moment.
Why do you think, Omar, that both of these productions were outrageously successful with Malaysian audiences?
To be honest, that's still a mystery to me.
Really?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm very surprised. I mean, for example, Dato Seri, the first time we did it, we were sort of anticipating, who's going to watch, Shakespeare in Malay? What sort of interest is going to... but to our pleasant surprise, people responded to it. I mean, like Dato Seri sold out before the show even started.
That's right.
We were genuinely surprised, because we were not anticipating that. In fact, we were sort of worried that,
Are you trying to tell us that you're very clever?
No. I'm trying to say that perhaps we're clever by accident,
Yeah.
So it's. I think it was fortunate for us. I think at that point as well, to be honest, I think there was that interest in politics.
Yeah.
I think one of the concerns at that time was that, in 2015, 2016, was that perhaps because of the economic uncertainty due to political instability or uncertainty at the time.
Was it the sign of the times, maybe?
Perhaps, and it was also, and I think a lot of people were anticipating the elections. Yes. So a lot of a lot of corporates were not were not too keen on sponsoring shows and so on.
Are you surprised, Omar, that the authorities sort of didn't come into the picture at all? Didn't complain?
Well, I'm glad they didn't, and I think
the only thing they questioned was the title of Dato Seri.
Yes,
right?
the title. Yeah, why is
this? Is this about our Prime Minister?
Yeah. That was that. Yeah. But that's the thing. I think it's something that we sort of made sure as well, because I think it was important for my father that that if you want to talk about politics, if you want to talk about sociopolitics, that we have to be fair. And I got a lot of comments from my own arts practitioners, my peers, about because as a lot of our arts practitioners are, I would say, very far left, and I got some very negative comments on why are you chickening out, some of that's the term that they use. But for my father, it was very clear. For him, it was that we do not want to impose our socio-political views, for example, in our case, at least not blatantly, because we do not want to isolate people from our conversation, and that was very important to him, so that we maintain this conversation, that we keep on having this conversation, because in the end, all sides want a better Malaysia.
Sure.
Perhaps the idea that we have of what a better Malaysia is, perhaps different, but it's important that we keep on having that conversation. And I think sometimes what we tend to do, especially on the art side, on the sort of leftist liberal side, is that we sort of say, we have the answers.
We're leftist, are we?
Oh no, I wouldn't say. I mean, I'm not claiming anything, but I'm just saying, But for my father, it's important to include other people in this conversation, because in the end, we're going. We have to do this together anyway. Okay. So that's an important part of what that we do.
We're running out of time, but I'm getting a signal from Coebar.
He's talking too much.
Can you give some examples maybe of like out of Dato Seri, for instance?
Oh, sure.
An English. What the English says and how you adapted it into Malay.
Okay.
You can read it off your phone if you
Sure, because I don't.
because I don't expect you to be totally cognizant of what you wrote. How many years ago now?
I'm glad. Yeah, it's been 5. No, more than that. 5 years.
Yeah,
now.
5 years.
5 years now.
Yeah.
But how about this, Joe?
Yeah.
Why don't you read the original from Macbeth? From the Scottish play.
The original in English.
Let's hear it. See, I've got it here. You can read it, and I'll do the Malay. How's that?
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Coebar will cut it.
Coebar will cut it. Whichever. Where is the English?
Yeah. How about that?
Okay. This is Macbeth speaking. Yeah?
This is the most popular speech. Like that. Yeah.
She should have died hereafter. There would have been a time for such a word. Tomorrow. And tomorrow, and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
Wow, thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
You should try acting.
I should try acting. You think I'd be a good actor?
I think you'll be quite
maybe
decent. Yeah. You should try this acting.
Can you do the Malay translation now?
Sure, I'll be happy to. I'll be happy to. Okay. Here goes. Dia pun tak mungkin bertahan lama. Kematiannya sekadar masa. Katamu itu sudah lama pun kutunggu. Kini tibalah ia. Hari esok, setiap esok dan esok lagi akan merangkak masuk dari hari ke hari hingga ke nokta terakhir catatan masa. Setiap semalam cuma mendekatkan kita, sebodoh kita, ke jalan mati. Padamlah kau, cahaya lilin. Hidup hanyalah satu bayangan, bagai seorang pelakon sepi yang resah belagak selama berada di pentas kecil, walaupun sejenak, kemudian hilang di telan sunyi. Hidup hanyalah sebuah cerita yang diriwayatkan si bodoh bahlul, gegak gempita, seperti guru. 𝐏𝐄𝐀𝐌, tanpa makna, tanpa arti.
Oh, hey, you and I make a good pair.
Hey, not bad, huh?
Not bad, huh?
We should read poems.
Yeah, we should
translate
together.
Yeah. Translation.
Thank you very much, Ali.
Thank you, John.
Did I call you Ali?
I guess that's my surname.
That's your surname, right. What's your name? Omar. Yeah. I'm joking, guys. I'm joking. Okay. Thank you very much, Omar. For giving us a wonderful episode 2 of Talking About. So, guys out there, that was Omar Ali talking about his penchant for adaptation of classics. Not only is he a good director, not only is he a wonderful actor, not only does he do all these sorts of things, but he's a nice bloke as well. So, stay tuned. The next episode, I don't know what it is yet, but I'll tell you in the coming weeks. Thank you very much. Bye.